So I thought the book was really interesting, but so tell me about wanting to be a kicker at 8 years old, falling in
Yeah.
love with kicking at 8 years old.
Yeah, well, for me, I was in all different sort of sports, all different kinds of sports. But uh, back in the '80s, this is when I got into football. There was this competition called punt,
Mm-hmm.
pass, and kick,
Uh-huh.
and that's what my father talked me into it because he thought I had a really good leg, and I did really well on that, and that really what started me being really into kicking. So beyond just I played football at the time, but that got me hooked on just the position itself of kicking.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever think in your wildest dream that you'd be a football player?
You know, yes and no. Like at a young age, I was pretty innocent, and I thought I started to dream about it at that age. So I started the dream at that age. So there was, I always thought that I could, but of course, as I got older, then I started to doubt myself. But certainly, when I was young, I thought it was possible. But then as I got older, it was more like, well, I got to work hard so I can make this happen, even though I still believed in it. But then my belief was, yeah, I could do it, but I had to work obsessively to get to that goal.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's what happens to a lot of us. We start the dream process, and then as we get older, if you're not careful, you'll be broken by the burdens of what has to happen to make the dream come to fruition.
Exactly. Yes. Yep.
But you didn't quit though.
No, I didn't quit, and I had a lot of uh, obstacles, you could say, along the way. When I first played in college, the first college coach that I went to told me that he didn't think I was good enough, and he already had enough kickers. So I left that college, went to another college that it went a lot better, but it was a Division III school. So if I would have stayed there, it probably wouldn't have worked because there's no scouts there. It wasn't on TV or anything like that. So I eventually went to the University of Pittsburgh, where I finally got all my, I guess you could say, my kicking skills together, and I got noticed by the NFL, and then eventually made it to the next step.
So when you get to college, is your dream to become an NFL kicker? Because the
Yeah,
burden gets heavier.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. My dream was always to make it to the NFL, so that's why I kept trying to like upgrade, so to speak, the colleges that I played at, so I could get to a Division I program. But the goal was always the NFL. So it was interesting because even when I made the University of Pittsburgh Division I was happy, but I wasn't content. Like I had to have more,
Mm-hmm.
which was good and bad, because I was always working for what's next, but at the same time, I quite often wasn't enjoying like where I was. So, like even when I was at the University of Pittsburgh, playing teams like Notre Dame and Penn State, I was happy, but at the same time, like, oh, I gotta perform today because I want to play in the NFL someday. So there was always that what's next.
Mm-hmm. Never being able to be at peace right where you were.
Right, exactly.
So when did you figure that out? Happy but not
Well,
content? Because I think that's a lot of people's story.
right. I don't think I figured that out until after my career was over. And so my career ended in my mid 20s, and it was due to injuries. And it was maybe 3 or 4 years after that when I had time to look back. But also, my wife encouraged me to get into yoga and meditation, and then when I started practicing that on a regular basis, and that helped me to breathe, to
Mm-hmm.
be more in the present moment, to change my perspective on things. So instead of looking back at like, oh, your NFL career was you were a failure because I only lasted 3 years. I had time to think about it, and the yoga practice helped me to, instead of being stuck in the past, that I discovered that was really holding me back from living in the now, that I was able to
Mm-hmm.
look back and like, oh, you didn't fail, you did all you could. And now you can learn from that, and you can move on. So unfortunately, it wasn't until years later. And so now in my life today, I try to, instead of, if things don't go my way, and in life or business, instead of being stuck on that, to try to reframe as quickly as possible that, it's okay, that, failure is just part of the whole process.
The book, Sean, The Point After, to me, when I first looked at it, I'm thinking about the literal point after. But when you really read through the book, you really understand that the point after is a much more spiritual journey than the literal point after.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I was hoping for when I came up with the title. In my NFL career, I actually only made one point, and it was the point after. And so, but my hope was in the book was to sharing that my football journey was so much more than just
Right.
scoring points in your typical like a sports book, but it was about like what I learned along the way, and that was to be more in the present moment. And so the point after, as you mentioned, it was not what happened in my football career that I've learned. It was after.
And for me as the reader, it was almost like your football career was part of the journey. And oftentimes we make that thing that we want and that we desire, we make it all encompassing. But you really don't know how long a thing is going to last, because life
Right.
happens in seasons, right? And so God gives you the desires of your heart, and you work hard, and you are on the college team, and you get the recognition from there. Then you go to the league, but there are no guarantees about how long this journey will last. And so you get that, but then you understand, but it takes some time for you to understand that life does go on, and it's bigger than those moments.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, for me, it was all like, that was my identity. I remember when I first signed with the Detroit Lions, it was like, okay, now I am an NFL football player. Everything I have always wanted, or I thought that I always wanted,
Right.
now I had. And so that now I thought that's who I was. And, it still happens today. Like, like now, I get caught up sometimes, like now I'm a yoga teacher. Now I'm a father. And quite often I find myself like, like I keep reminding myself that we're not just this identity that we put ourselves on. And that was a struggle for me, that if I wasn't a football player, I couldn't be happy.
Right. Or if you weren't a football player, who are you?
Right. Exactly.
But I think that the whole book, it speaks to all of us, that we identify with what we do. And then if we're not doing what we've always done and been identified for, who are we really?
Right.
And so then you start the spiritual journey. And then how does that break out for, this was a part of my life, but I didn't really enjoy it because I was always worried about the next thing.
Yeah, exactly. When my career ended, I was 25. I probably spent about 3 years living in this world of like if I hadn't trained as hard as I had, I'd still have a career. Or, if I had gone to this school, then maybe my route would have changed and I could have been successful. And I just discovered that, when I started to practice yoga and meditation and looking back, that I realized, like, being in that world of if only just completely took me out of where I could be. And there's a quote, I forget right off the top of my head whose it's from, but it's, when we stare at the door that's closed, there's other opportunities that are out there, but we're spending way too much time staring at the closed door. That was me for many years. I just stared at that closed door and realize that there's so much more out there. So,
How did you get out of that, though? Because there are a lot of people that still can't you move forward, but there's always, what if I would have done this?
Right.
Or what if I wouldn't have gotten injured? What would have happened? How did you get to presence?
Yeah, I think for me, it was when, I started to take a regular yoga practice. When I first started doing it, it was all about the physical. and for me, my body was completely beat up from football, not just my back, but my hips. And I would approach my yoga practice the same way I would approach athletics. I would push, I would press, I would compete, I would look around the room. And at the time, yoga was really new and
Yeah.
not that many men were doing it. So I remember that my wife's class, there was 20 women and there was me, and I was in the back corner and I looked more like a broken down Volkswagen. And I became like really insecure. I was like, wow, if my body now is beat up and I'm in my mid 20s, what is it going to be like in my 40s and 50s and 60s?
Still looking ahead, not
right,
being able to be content right there.
right, exactly. Yeah. And so I would keep practicing. But what I discovered what yoga would do is after a while, I would have to give in, and I would have to breathe. And that was the thing I was most resistant to was the breath work in yoga. Because for me, I was really attracted to the physical part of it. And after a few months of practicing, I would start to breathe. And when I would start to breathe, I would find some sense of clarity. At the same time, when my career ended, my father found out he had terminal colon cancer. So I was just trying to cope with the football ending, and now I had that. But through the yoga practice and just having those few moments of breathing, doing the poses, or the final pose, which is the shavasana, where I would just lie there.
Right.
I would have these moments of peace, and so I found that was for me just taking some time for myself to breathe. And I think it's not just yoga that can do it. There's so many different ways: yoga, meditation, even just taking a walk in the woods. My wife and I during quarantine, we would do that every morning, and we would wake up really anxious. Our yoga studios are closed, and what's next? And we're trying to file for unemployment. But then when we go for a walk in the woods, just moving and breathing and just getting away from all the distractions, it would help us move on with what was happening. So for me, I think that's what helped me was the yoga. But as I mentioned, I think for all of us, there's ways that we can do it. That maybe aren't necessarily yoga, but just something that gives us that peace.
Now, I'm going to tell you, I was introduced to yoga 21 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't have any confidence at all in yoga or breathing. I didn't understand how this could help in any way.
Yeah.
But it's not until you just relinquish control and you just go with it.
Yeah.
So
That's it.
A few months ago, I was, before COVID, and I was at a yoga studio, heated yoga studio in town, and I hadn't practiced in a while. And so I was in there and in the back, because you go to the back when you hadn't been there in a while. And the instructor...
I still go there.
Well, I do too. And so she was saying, don't force the poses. And she said, and the competitive part of yourself wants to keep up with the person who is doing the poses and doing them just right. And she said, just don't force it. Just let go. And really, that was a literal let go and a metaphorical let go. And that's kind of what we see in the book, is that you're able to, at some point, let go of the competitive part of yourself, that you can just be present and you can just do what you can do in that moment. And so it kind of took me back to that time where, you're straining and you're struggling to be in the moment, to be where you think you're supposed to be or where you want to be. And life is just a series, especially with where we are now, of just having to let go.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. I love that. I mean, and that's the challenge, because I think like the first step is like always the awareness, like you said, like try not to push or to strain and just let go. And the first step is just to be aware when we go back into that old habit. I know that's still like a huge challenge for me. I can go back into that whole idea of pushing and 110%, but I try not to catch myself much quicker before I go back into that cycle again.
Because it is a cycle. And so when you're going through your dad's illness and you're trying to cope with where you are on this journey, yoga comes into play, but is there ever like a spiritual piece that says the universe has what it has for me, and I'm going to be a recipient of that if I'm just open to it, because I
Mhm.
can't really control it anyway. Because, I mean,
Right.
you figured out you couldn't control it with football.
Right, right, absolutely. And I tried to control my father's illness too. So when he got sick, I tried to, first see like, was there a doctor who made a mistake? So I went down that route, like because he had colon cancer and he had his colonoscopies. Did he not get it in time? And then I just started this crazy thing of just trying to find him everything. My wife and I just got the credit card out. We flew to France to find this place where they have this holy water that helps heal people. And I went through this whole thing trying to control that. And not until after he passed away, because even when he passed away, I just put it in a box. I'm just not going to deal with this. I'm going to pretend it didn't happen somehow. But not until after he had passed away for a few months, I just decided like I can't keep. I can't control everything. So
Wow. And so when did you finally get to that revelation that, because I mean, I still, and I think there are a lot of people that will identify with this, I still have to catch myself sometimes daily, understanding that I am not in control.
yeah, yeah. I don't know if it's possible to ever get to that point where we completely get past that. For me, it's just keep practicing that awareness. I try to meditate every day, and I've noticed that makes a big difference, even if it's just like 2 minutes. I know a lot of the studies out there in yoga, like you'll read like all these benefits that people had, and they meditate for 45 minutes or an hour, but just anecdotally talking to people who meditate, and I just know even for myself, if I just spend a couple minutes each day just sitting alone, and it's hard. We have 4 kids, so I'll have to schedule my time or
Hmm.
shut the door and just sit there. But just even a couple minutes can help me just work on that awareness. And it's interesting too. I find when I meditate, it seems like it's going horrible. Like the whole time I'm meditating, I start to go in that cycle. What do I have to do today? Oh, what about that person I had a conversation with yesterday? I shouldn't have said that. I should have said something else, or any of those little things. But always like afterwards, I feel better.
Hmm.
And I know the science backs up meditation, but for me, the science is great, but just having that trust and the faith, and you know just sitting still each day for a few days, I know makes a difference.
Hmm.
Just to quicken my awareness of when I start to go back to those
Hmm.
old habits.
Hmm. And so as you started writing the point after, and it's really a story of resilience. It's really a story of life happens the way that it's going to happen. We can't control it. We think we can. Control is just an illusion. And we just all have to keep reminding ourselves. What was your process like when you were writing the book? And how did it help to heal you in that moment, in the moments of writing it?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I found myself also trying to control the process too. So, so I would always commit every day, and it took me 7 years, which was really, really hard for me. I at an early age, I had ADD, so I was always, my mind was really busy. So each morning I would start to write, and I would get very upset after that, like 1 hour of writing, if there was nothing on the pages, or if I didn't like it. Or what would happen a lot is I'd maybe write for 5 days in a row, and after 5 days, I'd look back and be like, "Oh, that's terrible," and then it's gone. So there was that I fought with, but in the end, I guess that's what editors are for. So they'll
Hmm.
help you. So I would just write,
When did you let
but
go? When were you able to let go and quiet the inner critic?
yeah, I think it was, when I would write, and what I would use a lot, I would play music from the era. So like if I was writing about something that happened in 1986, I'd put on some music from that era. And I just found, when I would start to write, I'd go back in time to a place that when I was just feeling the experience is when I was able to let go. When I was trying to force words down onto the page, like, okay, this happened and what happened that day, and I'd push it. But when I would just, hey, just whatever comes to me, that's when I could let go. And so many times my writing wouldn't be in that set time between like 6 a.m. and 7 a.m., which I always try to do. It would usually be when I would maybe be out for a walk, or on the bus, and all of a sudden something would pop into my head, and I'd write that little note about the book. Those were usually like the more letting go moments that I put into my writing. They usually weren't that forced, structured time. So even though I wanted this completely structured way of writing the book, it came at all different times. Sometimes it would even just come from conversations. I would talk to somebody, to try to go back in time. If there was somebody in that scene of the book, I would call them, talk to them, ask them what they remembered, and that's usually what would spark it too. But it was usually more just like feeling that helped the words versus, this is what happened next. This is what happened next.
Were you able to forgive yourself? Your younger self for, being so hard on yourself and having this, by all accounts, really great experiences and meeting a lot of people and being in an atmosphere that most people will never enter into, and not being able to just throw your heart over the bar, let it be what it was, and just enjoy it.
Yeah, I think I was. When I look back at my career, it was great where I had my girlfriend, who then became my wife, along with me. But there was certainly a lot of times where I felt, right after this whole thing, like when my father was sick, and I thought about like sometime during my journey, I thought I was very selfish. Like I wouldn't communicate with my parents as much as I normally did because I was so focused. Like sometimes I was too busy to speak with them because I had to go to the weight room, or I had to go to the field and kick. And so that was something that I some guilt that I had for many, many years, especially, when my father got sick. But once I started to write the book and I realized, wow, like, I had such a busy mind that it wasn't me that was, really being selfish. It was just like who I was. And it was part of the process that I had to go to. And this is just how it went.
A lot of people have that busy mind that you talk about, Sean. And was it strictly yoga for trying to shut the mind down? Not shut it down, but trying to slow it down, so that you could really be present even before you knew about presence. Was
Right.
there anything that you did to try to slow it?
Well, for me, like looking back, and I realized that, I did have some moments of, where I could quiet my mind, but it was through sports. When I would train to be a kicker, I grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania, which, back in the 80s, the snow would come in November and you wouldn't see the grass again until April. And we had this rock field that I would go, just gravel and stone, and it was about 3 blocks from my house, and I would go there, and I found when I would kick, I'd be really relaxed. I'd be really in the present moment. And even today I can look back and I remember so much of that. I remember like, the snow and the ice and what it looked like, and the sunsets, and when I would kick late, in the evening. And so I realize now, I can get this space from, headspace from yoga and meditation, but there's also, other ways of accessing that. And I probably was accessing, a quieter mind when I was kicking and playing sports. And I think that is why I did play all these different sports as a kid, because that was the only way that I could have some sort of stillness.
Was that a burden, you think, that mind that just would never stop?
Yeah, it was hard for me, especially when when they put me on the Ritalin, and I remember the doctor telling me that that there was something wrong with me, to my mother. Like, he said, like, these pills will fix him. And that I had a hard time with that, thinking that there was something wrong with me, because I didn't think there was anything wrong with me. I just thought I was active and loud, and I always wanted to do stuff. So that I had a difficult time as a child. I was embarrassed because when I went to school, they would, I had to have to take out my pill in front of all my kids in the lunchroom. So I didn't do that because they all made fun of me. So then I would go to they had me go to the principal's office. So what I would do there was I'd pretend to take it, and so that was always hard because I thought that there was something wrong with my head, and yet at the same time thinking that there wasn't anything wrong with me. So eventually, over time, I realized there wasn't anything wrong with me. That was just the doctor's way of, my mother came in, this is what my son is doing, this is, what can you do? And he was just following what he thought was best, and so did my mom. But that took me a while, to probably until I was in high school, and to like, okay, that's over now. I'm not on Ritalin anymore. Or I never really was. Even though I was on it, I never took it. But the fact that they thought I needed it.
Were you able to reconcile those feelings with your parents?
Oh yeah, my mother, she's very conservative, and she just like wanted the best for me.
Right.
My father actually was against the Ritalin. I would hear them arguing in the kitchen all the time about it. My mother wanted me to be on it, but my dad's like, no, he doesn't need it. So it was just them being them, wanting the best for me, and it happened to be the conflict of the medication.
And I think that every parent that deals with a child who has a mind that is just running is trying to figure out the best thing to do. And as parents now, you're a parent and I'm a parent. We do the best that we know how to do in that moment or in that season, and you just hope for the best.
Right.
And it sounds like, that's just what they did. But the resilience that you write about in the point after is well taken for all of us, that no matter where we are, I think, the big takeaway for me as the reader is that, contentment really has to be an inside job. It's not until you find it on the inside that you can really find that peace, because you think the next thing is going to make you happy until you get to the next thing. And then when you get to that next thing, it has its set of challenges.
Right.
It's a vicious cycle if you don't ever stop. What do you hope, that at the end of this journey, 7 years, and when you were saying that, I was thinking, 7 is God's perfect number. It's the number of completion. And things happen just right when they're supposed to happen. And so after you've done the work and you've kind of thought about what this is going to be and what it's going to do and how you were going to do it and how you were going to finish it and all of that, what do you hope that people will really walk away with?
Yeah, it's such a great question, because I when I was 43, starting to write the book, I wanted to be done by the time I was 45, because it just seemed like, I thought, okay, well, I'm still young, I'm 45. And then once I got past 45, I'm like, oh, you know what? Okay, fine, before I'm 50, and then finally it came out, now I'm 50. And so now I'm thinking about, like, what a ridiculous way to think about writing a book. And because the whole idea behind the book, as you asked, like, the takeaway is just to be in the present moment. So all of that thinking of when I wanted a book come out, I just want to, like, get rid of, let go of. But that would be my takeaway, that just for us to remind ourselves, like, we have one body and one life, and to do our best to be in the present moment as much as possible. And the whole idea of, like, letting go of the past, it's so easier said than done. And I think it has to be something that we have to, consciously work for. And, that for me, my mind, it quite often is, it's either holding on to the past or in the future. It's not in the present moment as much as I'd like to be, but just being aware of that, reminding ourselves when we go back to there, I'm going back to that place. Because I know for me, there's like a certain place that I remember, I would always go back to, whatever it was. And for me, it was usually like this whole, like, I overtrained, and I used to picture myself in the doctor's office with the New York Jets when he told me my career was over. And I remember just cursing myself, like, why did you overtrain? You could have been in the NFL for 10 years. You'd have been able to support your family and had this and had that. But, so when I started to take on or get into the yoga, it was like letting go of that. Like, that didn't serve me at all to go back there, would just relive the pain of the past, and to be present. But I think it's a practice, almost like, like going to the gym and training like a muscle, like your bicep on bicep curls or whatever it may be. Practicing being more aware is something that we can train our minds to do. So the more often we catch ourselves going back to wherever that place is and coming back to now, over time, we can become more skilled at it.
That's powerful. Sean, I think the book is incredible, and I think that for people who will pick it up, it certainly is about football, but it really isn't. Football is just a part of the story that gets you into the present, and it allows you to find resilience after it's over, after that season of your life is over. Before you've got to go tell people about where they can connect with the point after, how one resilient kicker learned there was more to life than the NFL. How do you get it, and how do people connect?
I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, they can find it on my website, SeanConley.net, and on there's links to all the different, from Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and all the other books. And I believe it's in many of the bookstores. So if it's not there, they can always order it. But it's any of those ways they can get it. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's a great book, and I think it's timely because so many people are dealing with what's the chatter in their head, either looking back to what they coulda, shoulda, would have done, or looking forward to what they need to do, what they should do. And we miss this whole opportunity for what God has, or what the universe, whatever deity or whatever it is that you ascribe to. For me, it's God, what God has for you or for me right in this moment. And you miss it because we're too busy trying to control it.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
Absolutely.
Listen, I wish you all of the best of luck with the book and all of the things that you are on the journey to.
Thank you. This was great talking. I really appreciate it. Really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Listen, before you got to go, I want to tell you to look this guy up. His name is Jim Heaney.
Jim
Heaney.
How do you spell the last name?
HEANEY.
Jim Heaney. Got it.
And look, he's got an app. It's called Practicing Presence.
Oh, awesome.
And so like every hour you get this app, you set it up, and it just every hour at the top of the hour, it dings, and it's about breaths, and it's about taking 3 breaths. And in those breaths, it's about connecting and being in the presence of God. And I'm going to tell you, it has just, I'm not fully there, but I am doing it consistently. And just being present in the moment, being present with you.
You do that multiple times during the day? You do that?
Multiple times.
Wow.
I wake up at 4:15, so I set mine.
Wow.
Well, I do. We start early. And, but
because your show's in the morning live.
It says, ideally from 8 to 8, but it was just ironic that your book was talking about yoga, and it was something that interested me because that's really where I'm trying to be. I'm not trying to look ahead. Well, I am, because it's just human nature, but I'm trying to catch myself because I don't know what's going to happen and how it's going to happen. But if I can be content right here, right now, then the universe has an opportunity to work through me because I'm okay with where I am right now.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Where do you do yoga at?
It's a yoga studio called Yoga Yaya. It's heated yoga.
Okay, yeah, that's what we do too. The heated.
Yeah, and
so you like the heat.
I do. I like the heat.
Why is that? Do you think? I'm always because we love it too. I always love to hear what people say why they love the heat.
Well, because for me it feels like cleansing all of the impurities. But right. I was sharing with our radio audience when I initially found it and went in and just tried it. It was like, for me, it was like taking a dirty dish towel, which is me, the metaphor for me, and just wringing it out.
Oh, that's a good one.
You know what I'm saying? Because everything that's in you is it just comes out, and when you finally finish, it's like, wow. But
and it's the finish part. Sometimes before that, it's not so great, is it?
No, it's not.
No.
But here's the thing that I love about yoga, and maybe this is why it resonated with you so much, is because it's not a competition.
Right.
And see, if you're a competitor and I am, then you want to keep up with the girl who is doing like the most beautiful pose imaginable, and she's doing it effortlessly. But when you realize it's not a competition, and your body, you have stretched your body to the limit, then you're okay in going into child's pose.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're just okay with that.
Yeah.
Because there's no competition.
Right. It just takes all of us different amount of time to get to that point. And for some people, maybe years, and
some people never, because if you don't,
Right.
If you don't know, if you can't fix a thing until you know a thing needs to be fixed.
Right. Exactly. Yep. You should be a yoga teacher.
Anyway.
That's great.
So listen, you guys be well and continue success. And the universe has a great plan for your life and your business.
Okay. Hope to catch up with you again soon. This is great.
We'll do it.
All right. Best of luck. Best wishes. All right. Take care.
Same here.
All right.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
You can stream our podcast at Apple Music or Spotify. You can also check out full episodes on YouTube. Just type my name in.